Hello and welcome to Wine with Wendy. I am thrilled to be here today with two amazing and fierce women, Karen May and Kristen Malka. I'm Wendy Carpenter and I am the CEO at Penny Lane, and we are here with the true star, which is the Wine with Wendy. It's not called Wendy with Wine. It is called Wine with Wendy because today we are having a beautiful rosé called Whispering Angel. And I think as we get into our conversation today, you'll understand why this bottle of wine selected us. But first, let's talk a little bit about the dynamic between the two ladies. Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at Penny Lane?
Well, I've been here 21 years almost, Wendy, and I'm the clinic director in North Hills and North Hollywood. And I met Kristen when she came to
You actually hired Kristen.
I did. Hired her as a clinical supervisor back in the day. Then she promoted to assistant regional manager and on and on and on from there.
And Kristen, what do you do for Penny Lane at this point?
At this moment, I'm the Senior Director of Outpatient Mental Health Services. I also oversee our SUD program.
So for our viewers that may not know, you actually supervised Kristen, but now at this given time, Kristen is supervising you. Tell us a little bit about how that dynamic worked out. We'll start with Karen from your point of view.
It came about because Kristen was the right person for the job. So I really did love all the years supervising Kristen. I saw very early on that she had more than potential. She had drive. She was going to make things happen. And she was very, very hardworking and committed to Penny Lane. So
you saw a spark in her.
I saw a spark. And Kristen, you're so darn smart. So, so I knew it was just really a matter of time. If there was something that was available in the future, something that she wanted, she was going to go for it. So the transition was a really amazing one. And I think because of our relationship, because we were able to be so honest with one another around, well, this is weird. I was your boss for so many years and now you're my boss. And I feel like I got knocked off the totem pole a little bit. But let's talk about that. And really, at the end of the day, you are the right person for the job. I'm so grateful she's in it. And because we're able to be honest with one another, we can pretty much talk about anything. So we've made it work. And there's this level of respect that also really helps to make it work.
There was already a strong foundation of a relationship between the two of you, right?
Yes.
And you both went to almost brand new positions because it was at a time when Penny Lane acquired another organization. And as I recall, we sent you over there, Karen May, to make sure that they kind of integrated into the Penny Lane culture, which is no easy feat. So from your perspective, what was it like working for Karen, and now what is it like supervising Karen?
You know what? I loved working for Karen. And when you talk about that time, there was a conversation between she and I that's now going to be shared with everybody. I had gone over there initially, and she was still keeping home ship down here, but responsible for me over there. And the opportunity came up for a director position there, and she was wanting to do something a little smaller. But she was sensitive because she knew what my goals were. And so she had that conversation with me ahead of time and said, how would you feel about this? I guess you could take North Hills, she said. I was like, I don't want to take North Hills. That's too much for me. Well, how would you feel about me being the director? I said, I love working with you. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, I don't think I'm ready in this moment, so it's fine. And I was real glad that she came over and we got to continue working together. So, I think in a lot of ways we are each other's teachers. And I think, we're connected spiritually too. So we don't have a hard time talking about personal and switching over to business. And she doesn't have a hard time pushing back for me, and I don't have a hard time pushing back on her because we have that mutual respect. Yeah. And at the end of the day, We're going to come and bring it together. Nobody's going to walk away in a huff and a puff. We're going to find out the solution because we both want to get it done and we want to be able to move forward. So,
Cheers.
Cheers. You guys bring up one of the things that I'm most proud about at Penny. Oh, I should cheers. Is this idea of genuine authority versus the positional authority, right? With the positional authority meaning I'm your boss, you got to do what I say, versus the genuine authority, which is about the relationship.
Right.
And it's a conversation, right? Nobody does anything just because somebody says you've got to and feel good about it.
Right.
People feel good when there's a conversation. And I think the two of you have really exemplified that very gracefully at Penny Lane in doing that and being honest. And it's not easy to do that.
Right.
But you've always put the relationship and quite honestly the work at Penny Lane ahead of any kind of hierarchy.
Right.
Or ego.
Or ego.
Because
Yeah.
I'll be honest, my little ego was bruised.
You're an
for a
Aries.
hot little
You're an
minute.
Aries, yeah.
It was, I went into my little corner and had to lick my wounds.
I know
and
that
then
feeling.
got myself together and realized what's the end game here? What's the outcome? What's the purpose? And that's what drives us, is providing for others. We're important, but we take care of ourselves and then we go and do the work we need to do.
And I would guess, Kristen, that Karen's opinion or feedback really resonates or holds weight with you
Absolutely.
because of that relationship. You know that even when it's hard, she cares enough to say it.
Yes. Yes. She gives me the real.
Well, we appreciate honesty here
Yeah.
with everyone.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you both agree with me that, before you can make true transformation as a boss or in your job or in an organization, you really do have to kind of sit back and self-reflect. Tell us a little bit about, tell us a little bit, more wine? No. Tell us a little bit, Kristen, we just for our viewers to know, we did some rebranding, right? And with our new logo, there's the line that says transforming lives, because that's what we do here, right? Mm-hmm. But in order to transform someone or help someone else transform them, we need to kind of go through our own transformation. Tell us about a time when you had to really transform, or given the opportunity or the challenge in your life where you're like, you know what, it's either I transform or I'm not going to make it.
Mm-hmm. I would say the one that takes the top of the list is going through the cancer diagnosis of my 14-year-old daughter,
Olivia.
And, hearing that news that annoying cough was actually a massive tumor in her chest, and she was stage 4, and, but hold on, we're doing the tests. Going from this moment of being told initially with this treatment, she has an 80% success, rate of improving. It's 4 to 6 months of chemo. I thought, okay, all right, this is just a minor bump in the road, and we're going to be able to, weather this. That's not how it went. It was a grueling process. Ultimately, the side effects and the complications from the chemo and the opportunities for infections to take over her body really put her in a extremely fragile state. One day I had her be able to talk with me, and the next day, for the following 5 or 6 months, she was essentially brain dead. The cancer had relapsed to her brain and her spine. I look at my spirit during that time, and one of the things that I had to constantly remind myself every single day when I got up to get in my car was like, I have to show up and I have to be my best, and I need to keep the faith. It's not over until it's over, and I have to bring my best self to her every day.
And how did it transform you?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of my understanding of life and death, my spiritual beliefs, prior to going through all of that, I feel like I've been on a spiritual journey. I was raised with a certain religion that I didn't really, feel like it totally resonated with me. So I've kind of been on this path of, an eclectic spiritual journey. And going through all of this is one of the questions that you frequently get. Gosh, why? But why? But why? Well, I'm asking the same thing. But I need to find out the why. And if I can't find out for a fact what the why is, then I got to find out what's going to resonate with me and what is going to make sense. So for me, I've just spoken to her through a medium. I've spoken to her on my own. I look out for signs and symbols. It's these kind of conversations.
That's
it's
right.
connecting with other people who are really struggling with their loss and their grief, and giving that sense of hope and that security and that validation. Because I'll tell you one thing's for sure, no one on the other side wants for us to sit here and be miserable and a ball of tears every single day, unable to eat, drink, get up, go to work, and live life. Mm-hmm. No, the other side doesn't want that. I know that.
Karen, you had a similar situation with your brother. Are you able to share a little bit about the loss of him? And Kristen mentioned signs.
So my older brother also has taught me so much through his leaving this world. It'll be 25 years in December, which is crazy. Also died of a brain tumor, and perfectly healthy 35-year-old was putting his little girl to bed one night and had a seizure, and so he struggled for 5 years and then he passed away. We were very close, and he taught me so much in his lifetime and then after he moved on. And it was really, I thought, strange at the time, but my neighbor after he passed away said to me, I really want you to read this book, Many Minds, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss.
Yes.
And who's an MD from Harvard, and not a thick book,
Nope.
but read it because it may resonate with you. And I read it, and it changed, talk about transformation, changed my perspective about death, my perspective about living, and to be open to the universe, to be open to our purpose, for us to understand what that is, and then how we're living life is a choice every single day. But I don't fear moving on to that next dimension. I'm not afraid of dying. I hope I've imparted that to my two boys, and knowing that I am grateful, as I live in a place of gratitude like Kristen, to be grateful for every day, trying to make the best of every day, because I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know what 10 minutes from now brings, but I know that I want to enjoy right now. Even if it's not a moment that I'm feeling great about, I'm in it to the best of my ability. And so he taught me a lot. I think it's fascinating that when people leave this lifetime and they move on to that next dimension, in my belief, that they're still with us. And to your point, want us to be happy. And I truly believe that before we're born, we have a sense, our soul has a sense of how long we're going to be here in this lifetime. And that people who leave knowingly that they were here to do their work. So I'm very passionate about knowing what is my purpose here and how am I fulfilling that, and how am I helping others to fulfill their own journey.
Yeah, and everyone can see now why we're drinking the Whispering Angel. Because our angels are with us. I truly believe that. Karen, you brought up purpose, and we had alluded to this a little bit about the core gift. And for our viewers that might not be familiar with what the core gift is, but it's really a way to discover, why are we here, and why have we been drawn to a certain field or to certain people. Kristen, can you talk a little bit about when you knew this work, which is the hardest, trust me, healing, trying to heal people, hard work, when you knew this was your purpose and why?
The funny story that I always tell was, being in high school, and not unlike every other teenager, I was on the telephone, like the one that plugs in the wall.
We're dating ourselves, ladies. We do not want to do that.
And, my parents had a hard rule, all the phone, you had to be off the phone at 10, and before they learned that they needed to take it off the hook in their bedroom to keep me off, I would, sneak and be on the phone, sometimes till 1 a.m. on a school night or whatever. And what was I typically doing? I was typically helping counsel my friends through love relationships, parent difficulties, you name it, self-esteem issues. And I'll never forget my father, which, after they had taken me myself to therapy, right? Because, I was a piece of cake for them to raise. They had taken me to my own therapy, which, was great because I got a lot of my independence and freedom because they were psychoeducated about my lifespan and development of being a 17-year-old, needing to be independent and individuate, and they needed to let me go a little. But in any case, my father was the one who put the idea in my head and said, John Smith, it was really his name, the therapist, like, why don't you should be a counselor. I mean, as much time as you spend on the phone helping solve everybody else's problems, have you ever thought about that? I was like, yeah, maybe. And so at the time, I was very into the theater. And so that was really my passion. That was my art. And, it was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll keep that in the back for a backup plan. So I majored in theater, changed majors, went into sociology, and then, went on to get my master's and followed this path. Working with this population that we serve here at Penny Lane and where I first started my internship and my work as a residential counselor, it was there that I thought, I could probably make a career out of this and be completely and totally fulfilled. Because the path for an MFT is typically the private practice or work for, the big health organization, right? Or, community mental health. I mean, there's teaching, there's other things to do, but I knew I wanted to be of service. And I knew that working with some of our most vulnerable members of our community was deeply gratifying for me. And so, that's 22 years now.
And you say it's gratifying. How do you know that it's gratifying? What does that feel like for you?
So to see someone that has struggled, that's in a really difficult predicament, then be mobilized with resources to improve their situation, there's just nothing better than that.
It's a high, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
To see them take advantage of that, to see, a family that was in a very intense situation that I had at another agency in an FSP program. This was on the news. It was a serious situation. And to see that mom take her 4 kids and be in a shelter and then get CalWorks and then get, CalFresh and get the public benefit, go and get her LVN through Valley College, and she started out as an undocumented person. So it was like, here she took this tremendous situation in her life and took advantage of all of the resources, and that your life can be different, There's a way, there's a vehicle for that to happen. And because I want that for everyone, I don't want to see people suffer. I want for people to be able to, stand on their own 2 feet and make a living for themselves, take care of their kids, feel the support, do all of those things and not be burdened by these other things in our society. So
yeah, you talk about fearless. When you look at some of the people that we have the honor of working with, my God, the obstacles that they are faced with, and yet somehow, and I do believe, in the case that you were talking about with the client in the full service partnership, and God, it's the love of her children, right? There's something about that, innate,
resilience.
and just to fight for something that's bigger than you. Yeah.
It's very powerful. And to witness, that's how we feel. You know, when we are, like you said, honored enough to work with our clients who come to us with such hardship, without knowing the resources, to be learning from them and building that relationship so that they can change their lives, and but they come with such strength. It's really remarkable.
We've talked a lot about what it feels like to be in our purpose. And I think we described it a little bit as a high, and being able to witness when our families and kids and individuals who we're working with are resilient and somehow find a way. And I think love leads it, but they find a way. Tell me about a time when you were not in your purpose and what that felt like, and how'd you get yourself out of that, Karen?
The first thing that popped in my mind is I went to another health issue, having a personal issue that really did rock my world, and feeling like I'm invincible and, you know, I've been healthy, and all of a sudden maybe I'm not. So how I got myself out of that was, again, trying to really understand, gather all the information, and trust your intuition. So I think I apply that personally and at work in trying to help everyone see a clear path and to trust a little bit more in terms of what feels right. I know that isn't always easy to understand or to believe, but more times than not, I think we end up okay.
You know, it's interesting. We've spent some time talking about our own kind of personal feelings and experiences and our spirituality. How does that relate to our work? I mean, there would be those that would argue that there is no room for spirituality at the workplace. And yet, you know, I believe very differently, that I think that your spirituality, your whole person, who you are, your authentic self, is the only thing that holds an agency together. You can't come in with some propaganda or some mission, vision. You've got to come in with what you stand for, who you are. How do you apply that to your work, Kristen?
Well, I mean, I think when I think of spirituality, I think of it helping us to create and find meaning, right? And if we aren't bringing that to the work, then it's a little lifeless, right? It falls flat. So it's super important to be able to leave that door open and allow people to explore that when they need to. Because you know what I always say is, like, it's a job, you know, it's a passion job, but it's a job. And then there's life, and there's things that happen. And, you know, our staff, myself, we go through a variety of different things that we don't always have control over those things happening. So we need to remain open, patient, understanding, and be there and support, and not judge or, you know, any of those other negative words that would go along with that. But really create the space, because, again, that builds stronger connections.
Yeah, and again, you know, it's interesting. We've all been to graduate school. You know, we went through all that. And, you know, what did we learn? We learned to take a case, right, and to immediately diagnose. And then we, as the professional, come up with the treatment plan and all of the symptoms. And isn't that a deficit, non-spiritual, non-gifted way of looking at families? How do you see us doing that differently at Penny Lane?
Well, it's interesting because you describe impairment, right? So we're trained to look at impairment. But a few years ago, there was a shift and into looking at strengths. And I think that really is where we're at, is, yes, there have been difficulties, and the level of functioning is not where a person perhaps wants it to be. So our job is to go in and, as partners, collaborate with our clients so that we can build from their strengths so that they can improve their level of functioning. So it's isn't it fascinating to change slightly that shift from looking at impairment to strength? When you do make that change and you're looking at just strength, there's a lot of power and there's hope that comes with that. So I think it's very important to start the work, whether it's work within self or work with others, from your strength.
It's interesting you say that. I was thinking of a situation in one of our wraparound programs, which, as you know, is one of the programs where our team goes into the home and supports the family there instead of, pulling the kids out and saying you're bad parents. And it was during a child and family team meeting where the team was there with the family. And as you know, the first question you ask the family is, what do you do well? What are your strengths? And to look at this family, no one had ever asked them that. They were so used to going into school meetings and going into the county departments where they're told everything that's wrong. They struggled. Yeah. It took 2 or 3 meetings for them to even begin to think about what they do well. And I remember the team just being so frustrated because to them it was pretty clear what was a strength in this family. And yet the family couldn't get there until Abuelita, the grandma, somehow just in the course of conversation said, when we were at church on Sunday, and all of a sudden, you talk about spirituality in the workplace, but all of a sudden things started to kind of click into place for this child and family team, because immediately they found out something that they did not know about that family. And that's what we've talked about, is the hope, right? They believe in something that they can't see, but they believe in something that they feel. And all of a sudden, the entire treatment plan, case plan, the family was able to build around their faith. And at the next child and family team meeting, guess who was there? It was their pastor.
Right.
Because that's who they were calling in the middle of the night. It wasn't the police. It wasn't their, Department of Children and Family Service social worker. It was the pastor. And so I think, you make a perfect point in that for us as professionals, it's so much easier just to go through the checkbox of what's wrong. But when you can turn it back to the family and empower them as to what has been working and the resilience, the faith, whatever it is, and to build from there, I think is one of the most powerful things we do at Penny Lane.
So I agree with you, Wendy, that is what we do best. And here you are in your new role, because we've worked together for so long, I remember, in your history and starting out as a residential counselor. And I've seen your transformation and your spiritual growth. I'm curious, how do you feel the connection between the turn we took here at Penny Lane and how that relates to your own personal growth? Did the two go hand in hand, or did you see one happening without the other?
Such a great question. And you know that when I went through some of my most difficult times at work, I came to you. And, we've talked about kind of our spiritual transformations. I can't say that I was ever a deeply spiritual person until I had a tragedy at the workplace. And you both know this situation better than most, but, it was a young lady that we were working with over in our residential program, and she was sick, and our staff members walked past her and did not stop and check on her, because she was one of these young ladies who had made up being sick in the past. And so this was yet another chance, right? And it turned out she had meningitis and almost died. And it was such a wake-up call for me on so many different levels. Talk about having to do your self-awareness. I had created this. Because when you looked at all the paperwork, when you looked at the head check sheets, when you looked at the end of log reports, boy, that paperwork was right in line. I was the queen of compliance. I had perfected how to be perfect. And so anytime anybody would come in and do an audit, boy, we looked good. But we lost our heart. I had lost my heart. And I had to be taken down to the nubbin. And when I say the nubbin, I was called in front of county people that I had considered friends and allies, and rightly so, they really called Penny Lane and me professionally on the carpet. And I just remember breaking down and saying to myself, what am I doing? Who am I? What kind of treatment and care should we be giving at Penny Lane? Do we want to appear perfect and have all the paperwork right? Or do we want to be good people and care? And it was that moment when I really did have to turn to something greater than myself and to be able to look at, why did I have this need to be perfect? You know, and that's the hard work, right? That's the digging deep and going back and looking at my own upbringing. And I got love when I did perfect. I didn't know how to get love by just being me. And that's nothing to say against my parents.
Right.
That's not about them. It's just, that was just the environment of the time. And so you ask, Karen, you know, how has this evolved for me? I have learned that the paperwork is not that important at the end of the day. It's transforming the lives. It's seeing this mom with her kids and becoming a documented citizen and living a life. That's the work that matters. And that's what will be remembered. It won't be all these great audits. So I try to lead now, you know, even with staff and whatever, with, God, what matters? And it's the relationship that matters.
100%.
That's what it's about for me. And you know, it's interesting in this new role as the executive director, CEO, whatever you want to call the title, I'm a little removed from that. You know, I'm a little removed from the relationships.
Yeah.
And that's sad for me. And so it's about finding the purpose in that.
But don't you think too, the timing of the pandemic? Because I think about that in terms of when you transitioned your role and then the pandemic, and you're very engaging and want to be in the know and around people, and here it was like, here's your new big job, but we're not going to give you any people that you can connect with.
Yeah, I was pretty pissed off. I was pretty pissed off. Yeah, I had thought that the new job would be, you know, galas, you know, and walking down the hallways and you know, having the love. No, there's none of that. But you know, the pandemic was interesting for me because it was almost my sweet spot, because it was a crisis, right? And we come from residential where it's always a crisis.
Right.
And so I could feel myself slipping back into that old role. And so it took me a while, and I'm still finding my way, of who I truly am now. And I'm not sure I've found that out yet. But yeah, the pandemic really kicked my ass. I was very disappointed. Right?
But, you know, talk about transformation, right? It's ongoing. That's what's so beautiful about this process. And I really am excited about what's ahead, because it's evolving.
And true, you both bring up the pandemic and opportunities. It's been a great opportunity for Penny Lane, right? To kind of sit back and say, what we knew is, what does our community need? And sometimes it's not the formalized individual, group, or family therapy. Sometimes it's, I need some food, or I need a place to live, or I just need to get through the night. You know, you see this a lot with our domestic violence survivors. You know, they're not thinking about, you know, their, you know, diagnosis or their case. No, how am I going to survive? How am I going to keep my kids safe? And so I do think that the pandemic has given Penny Lane the opportunity to look at different ways, and domestic violence is one of those. And so is substance abuse. You've seen so much overseeing that program. Can you talk a little bit about how substance abuse has really been affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, interesting, because I don't watch the news very often, but I was somewhere in yesterday, I think it was, and I caught two stories. One was that the temperature, the body temperature, has gone down, the average temperature to be 97.5. I thought that was pretty interesting. But sadly, that the people awaiting liver transplants on wait lists has skyrocketed. I think the percentage was somewhere between 40 and 60% through the pandemic. And I didn't catch the rest of the story, but when we talk about substance use and we talk about what happened and what's happened during the pandemic, is the use has gone up exponentially. For people, there's no boundary between work and day and home and, time. And, I think that a lot of people have turned to that for some level of comfort. And, so I think it's definitely gone up. In terms of on the treatment side, we've actually seen a lot better engagement because we were forced to provide those services via telephone, provide them via the screen, right? Have those opportunities to do the telehealth. And our attendance went up. People were more engaged because they were less worried about how to get here. And there was a convenience factor. There are other challenges in doing that ongoing, I think, as a primary way to deliver the service. But yeah, the pandemic has really impacted, I feel like, our society with substance use.
Karen, how do you see the pandemic really impacting the staff that you work with?
It's been rough. There's no question. And I will say that the level of adaptability and being able to quickly shift and learn in a completely different way to provide services via telehealth and doing the best we can to keep connections with our clients. And let's face it, not all of us are techno savvy and just getting on the computer is a lot. So we have a lot of empathy for the parents who had to learn to teach their kids a curriculum and help them attend school and talk about their feelings and all of that via telehealth. Really, really rough. I am amazed at how well we were able to, that the staff were resilient and strong and just were so tired but kept on trying, and we worked together in supporting that process. I'm very excited by the fact that we're in this different place now where the level of vaccination went up and there's more protection, and we're starting to be able to see each other more, even with our mask on. And, at that time where we could actually see each other down the hall. And when you talk about the relationship, being able to just be present in someone else's space is so wonderful. So we continue to see our clients and we continue to be with them in the field and where they're at, or if they are not comfortable, then via telehealth. But being witness and spending close proximity to those that we care about is really a great place to be.
And Kristen, we have not experienced the great resignation that other agencies may have experienced. At Penny Lane, we seem to have been able to retain our employee. Why do you think that is?
I think for the most part, the way that we approached the situation, the crisis of the pandemic, how we transitioned that, all of our workforce to working from home, which I don't think was unusual to us, but we did so with a lot of compassion, and we were very thoughtful about every person's individual job set and their personal situation in terms of what would make the most sense. So I feel like part of why we've been successful is because we have to stop and take an individualized approach, which is what we do with our clients, right? We don't just throw them all in and do a rubber stamp of, this one has this problem, that problem, that, it's very individualized. And so I like to think that that's what the staff are feeling, right? And that we want to work it out. We want to try to do what makes sense by our clients and our families, and what makes sense for our staff in order to continue to be employed and do the work. But yeah, I think we have great supervisors. I think the supervisory teams do a lot of containing, a lot of holding, a lot of reflection. We tend to get newer therapists in the field when we talk about that particular role. So there's lots of opportunities for training and teaching, and we've kept all of that going throughout all of this, and we understand and we want to make it work.
Just to add on to what you're saying is that we focus so much on work-life balance. We have staff who are having to manage what everyone's managing. We're in this community collectively. So having to teach their kids from home, or having to run to this or that, and to do their job and to support their staff. And we constantly talk about, what is it that you're needing? I see that you are working yourself to a place where it's difficult for you to even manage. Please take Friday off. Please take Monday off. Where is your balance? So we talk about self-care a lot. It's a word that seems cliche to a lot of people, but it is essential that we're taking care of oneself. As we talk to our parents about self-care so that you can be your best to help support your kids, it's all a parallel process. And so when one is self-reflective, or one is taking time to take care of yourself, that could be like a 5-minute timeout. I better go outside just to put my feet in the dirt and ground myself and breathe for a minute, to come back to work or come back to family and try to be our best selves.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies. I want to recognize Craig and Olivia and all of the Whispering Angels that are with us today. And I can't imagine a better time than the last hour with the two of you. So thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Wendy.
To Penny Lane.
To Penny Lane.